great.
So it's great to meet you, man. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it as well.
You bet. So I'm going to hit the ground running here. We're coming up on the 4-year anniversary of this pandemic. Let's go back. How did you survive that pandemic and how did it change you?
From a business perspective, from personal, which sort of
Man,
angle?
man, that Venn diagram bleeds so much into itself. It was such a weird time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for me, I think we started our business at the start of the pandemic, and so it was this crazy moment of incorporating in sort of April that year and diving off from a remote first culture, not being in a place where you have a headquarters that is, the center of your startup. And I think one of the biggest things that I've been reflecting on how the pandemic changed me and sort of what was lost there was a sort of connection to time and a connection to the early days of the emotional journey of building a startup. There was just a much smaller number of moments that felt like they actually stick in your mind because it was so remote centric. And I think part of, what's changed is cherishing those types of moments more and more. And I think that now that we get to have lots more of those in our company in life, that it makes you value them more and more because you also know that you missed them for several years in that starting phase.
So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do as a business owner. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day. And one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
Yeah, it's a great question. Always important to go into the most simple language. I certainly can get lost in the jargon sauce sometimes myself, so it's
Yeah.
good. I would say think about wood. It's a material that comes from trees. We use it for almost everything to build houses, to build tables, to build the floors around us. And right now, we get wood by cutting down trees and forests. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, but some of the time, a significant amount of time, it's not so good for the planet. We also end up wasting a lot of wood. So we waste wood when buildings come down. We waste wood when trees, which are living things, die. And there's lots of other reasons that we waste wood. So we have all of this wasted wood. And right now, we're not using it for anything. Our company makes it really easy to use that wood. And instead of sort of having the bad version of going and cutting down new trees, use waste wood instead and have a much more sustainable, healthy planet. What does that actually look like? Super simply, we sell carbon smart wood to people who build things, and then we help all of the different people who actually salvage the material, who use it, who turn it into a higher value product, connect. So we connect the supply chain to sell that material.
Wow, that's amazing. So what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
My dream, I had two dreams. I was really interested in being a garbage man. And I was also very interested in being a truck driver because I was convinced that that was the best way that you could sort of see the world. And
Yeah.
dad had not a semi, but a truck. Was just very interested in trucks and driving around.
So where are you from? Seattle originally?
From New Mexico, born and raised in New Mexico.
Okay. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about how this dream came about for this company. What was kind of the path? What were the seeds that were planted into you that grew, so to speak, into who you are today?
Yeah, I actually really like that analogy. I often find that when you look, retrospectively, it's very easy to sort of connect the dots as a heavy-handed self-narrator, but the idea of sort of seeds being planted and it's less organic or less linear than it can seem
Yeah.
is really nice. So the seeds for me were I grew up in a really arid, dry environment. Trees got killed by pests when I was young, and I understood really quickly that was connected to climate change. My mom was a scientist. So that's sort of seed one is understanding and caring really viscerally. I was really into like teams and leading teams and I was always captain of my like youth soccer team and did lots of stuff that was related to that. I was class president in fifth grade, those kinds of things that are around sort of leading teams. So that was a seed. I think a third seed was a real fascination for people and sort of how do you create new things. So I started my first business when I was 7, was always had a new idea, wanted to do it, would get some people to join it. So creation, sort of in that. Then I think the last piece was wood. My dad, as a construction worker and a carpenter, grew up in the wood shop with him, and all of those seeds together, and have now grown into this exciting new phase and what we're working on. But definitely was not a totally linear path to get there.
It's interesting. I think about, I do a lot of visual arts. That's one of my paintings back there, and I love painting on wood. And I had a neighbor of mine is rehabbing his house, and the guys were out there the other day, and I was like, "Hey, can I go through this wood?" And
Oh
everybody's always like, "Yeah, absolutely." And I'm blown away by with what you're doing, how much excess, just little pieces, big pieces, medium-sized pieces that just get thrown into a heap pile, and it's perfectly good wood,
yeah, 100%.
you
Well,
know?
it's crazy if you think nationally, you think about something like steel, it's something we use in everything, sort of similar to wood and sort of its use cases. We recover about 98% of steel in the country. Like a very small amount of it is ending up in waste or in a sort of waste product. For wood, it's about 5 to 8%. And that's crazy, is
Yeah.
unbelievably different in how we recover and salvage material.
I'm fascinated by this business model. You must your clients have to just be absolutely over the moon to be involved with something like this, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great opportunity for them to participate in being part of this bigger movement and doing something this is a material we already use, so it's plug and play in that sense. It's really price competitive, so you're not having to deal with giant changes in price, and it has much better upside, and all of that ties into there's no brands in wood. It's a $215 billion industry. There's no brands. No one's, really building that. So we're really bringing a brand forward approach to an industry that has overlooked that. And I think there's a huge opportunity to catalyze and build value both for us as a business, but in particular for our customers, because when they have that brand that they can use and tell their customers and share with their networks, it's really valuable.
So, who's been kind of a hero for you in your life? Who have you looked up to? Who's been a motivator?
Yeah, I mean, lots of different motivators from sort of the interpersonal. My He's an older brother, but not by blood, is somebody who first got me into long running, which is now a huge part of what I do. And he's somebody who has taught me how to just go through hard things with light and with levity and do that in a way that is really honest and like open emotionally, but also very direct and is unafraid. And that's something that has been critical in building what we're doing. And so he's a firefighter, he's an EMT. His name's Jason, and we spend lots and lots of time together. And I think the other thing that I've really learned from him and have always been fascinated with, different career, different life, I would definitely be in medicine, but learning about how they do triaging really well, in the fire service and in emergency scenarios as a place to learn so much about how do you triage really well in business and in startup, in the sense that you've got a lot of high priority important decisions to make, and actually what matters most is speed and sequencing. And so he's been a huge inspiration, a partner on so much of what we're building.
My wife started watching the show based in New Orleans that's about the EMT and about the police and all of that. And I started watching a couple of them. Sometimes it's a little too much.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? But I started kind of watching it, and New Orleans is a different breed. I mean, they were like, it's one thing to be involved in this, but when you're in New Orleans, it's a different beast. But the thing about all of them, every time any of them go in, whether it's EMT or it's fire or it's police, they're totally calm. All of
100%.
those people, it's amazing. They're like cats. Because when they have to spring, they spring. They just know what to do, but the whole time they're calm as a cucumber. And that's just something that you have to accumulate over time.
Absolutely. Well, it's the mantra, right? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And
Yeah.
it's you come in, and this is just really true in business, it's true in so many life spaces. But if you're already elevated, if you're already in a reactive state, you're not actually going to deal with the situation well. And
Yeah.
being type of sort of anxious, nervous, high intensity energy doesn't actually lead to better results. And so as much as you can come in from that grounded place, and that's hard to do, it takes a lot of time, takes a lot of practice, takes a lot of other factors as well.
Yeah. For sure. So let me ask you this. If you can meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find fascinating, whether it's an entrepreneur or whoever it might be, who would that be? Who would you love to meet and talk to?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. One of the people who I've been really just like fascinated by in the sort of broader climate circle, when you think about how this is going at bigger scales, is somebody like Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
And I think she has done a fascinating job of building movement in a space and has sort of inadvertently become a figurehead for how do you create a movement. And then also she's become a figurehead for backlash and to sort of be the face that is vilified in a space. And I think that she is really young, has tons of energy, and is looking at a really long scale. And I would love to, continue to learn and see how her vision of the world is coming to be and how she thinks about movement building, having been so successful with that.
And it's amazing because I think she has some level of autism, I believe. I think she's on the spectrum.
Yeah, no,
And
I did.
yeah, and to have that level of focus and to have that level of moxie, because she's just not afraid of anything. I mean, she's going in and this is who she is. So let me ask you this. You're clearly not only an entrepreneur, but there's a good level of you that's a visionary. You're doing something that is heralding kind of a hopefully a new movement of capitalizing on these natural resources that we waste on this planet. What is it that gets you out of bed every day? What motivates you not only to do the job that you do, but you're a human and you have to evolve too. What's that whole gas in your tank feel?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple parts of it. One is just feeling deeper and deeper gratitude about getting to do anything. I just know that I'm so fortunate in my life to have these opportunities in front of me and cherishing that and cherishing getting to do it with the people around and really trying to savor that every day. That's amazing. I just feel so lucky. So that helps for sure. And then I think the sort of core source for me is that I'm really interested in both how do we create impact that's very holistic at a global scale and trying to find how I can contribute to that in the biggest and most sort of broad spectrum ways. And then also how do you really focus on growth and on process as an individual? And so something I've been thinking on, it's been a big paradigm shift for me in the last couple of years, is I spent a lot of my life optimizing for results. And now my goal is to really optimize for effort and for process. And what that changes is it changes from, all right, I'm working towards this thing, toward this thing, towards this thing. And that either happens or it doesn't. And then that's sort of a short term, sort of, okay, this is one big moment, to every single day you have a chance to like be really successful. And it kind of removes the focus on, hey, was today a good day or a bad day because good quote unquote or bad quote unquote things happened versus was today a good day or a bad day based on how did I handle what was in front of me. And I think that's a much better, broader perspective. And you just get to do that every day. And that gives me so much energy to wake up and know, great, another day to get after it and to try to build that process.
So of all the clients that you've had, all the moments that you've had so far, what's one of your favorite success stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, one of the biggest ones for us is partnering with Room and Board, which is, a large national furniture company. And one of the big things that we've done with them is we've helped them save material from walnut orchards, which in the US right now, when we grow walnuts, those trees get old, we basically burn them on site. It's generally what happens. We've created a program to help save that material, to connect into a local supplier and a local manufacturer. And that now is, available for national distribution. And that's happened, because they're really excited and they're willing to be leaders in the space. It's also happened because we've been really patient, have built up, the supply chain and have been learning how to navigate that. And I think one of the things there, why we're proud of that one is because it's one of the first, right? It's much easier to do this now with new partners. We're starting to hit scale as a company, but those first people who take a bet on you are reflections both of their courage and sort of their interest, and then also your team's ability to get through a lot of the challenges of getting first customers. And so I feel really proud of the work that our team did there.
So let's say we get to the 20-year anniversary of your company. Where do you want this to be? What speech do you want to give to your company and your clients on that day?
Oh, absolutely. I think about this all the time. I think that there have been a number of key sort of revolutions in the history of, our economy. You think about like the Industrial Revolution, right? The Agricultural Revolution, these moments in time where the fundamental inputs and context within which we operate as a society changes. And then that's defined by some big sort of event or change of technology that then has a huge trickle down, effect. And we're seeing that in several different ways now because the world is so global and moving so quickly. But I really think there's going to be a climate revolution, one that is changing fundamentally the nature of how, where, and why businesses operate. And in every sort of great era in history, there's been a few companies that define those eras. And oftentimes they create a lot more problems than they're solving. And so our goal is to be, one of the core companies of the climate revolution, one of the key pillars that has really contributed to dealing with this well and trying to be really holistic as best as we can as a company and doing that in a way that is creating value across the board for everyone. So that's our goal, this to be global, to be doing this across materials and to be making it just as easy and just as price efficient to access local salvage material as any virgin material across the world.
So of all of the things that you've done, become, and overcome in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Yeah, I think there's a lot there. Obviously, there's many different parts of growth that adds up to become who we are. I think one of the things that I'm most proud of is I spent a lot of time as a kid in high school and college being very concerned about how I was going to be perceived by other people. And I spent a lot of time building out my identity capital to be tied into what other people thought of me. And there's some good things that come from that. It makes you socially aware, makes you self-aware, but it also ties in sort of who you are into the sort of validation and expectations of other people. And it removes the sort of like necessary critical thinking to decide, what do I actually believe in the world? What do I actually believe is really important? And so that has been something that I've really worked on. And I feel like I've truly turned a corner in my being, in my work, in my effort, sort of across the board. And, that type of emotional identity capital change takes a lot of effort and has taken me decades. And, I'm nowhere near the end of that, but feeling like now I'm optimizing to create a world I really believe in and I think about and I've sort of owned rather than I'm trying to be perceived as doing something that's valuable. And I think those are pretty different things.
So this is a natural evolution to this next question. Everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, colleagues, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
That's a great question. I've been thinking a lot about there's a great Kobe Bryant quote. He's getting interviewed and he says he's sort of in a slump in his career, having a moment where he's not at his best. And the interviewer asks him, hey, you've been kind of letting down, organization and the fans. Like, how do you feel about not meeting their expectations? Kobe just pauses and he gives this look. It's like, I don't care about their expectations because their expectations will never be as high as my own. Like never, ever, ever. And so I feel that way, in myself a lot is that I both feel very proud, I feel very capable. And I also know that there's so much more of me that can be accessed. And so, when I think about how do I relate and think about who I am as a person, I think I'm somebody who is very dynamic and who is very interested in growing. And I think those are traits that I really like about myself. And I think I'm also very aware of there's so many more areas to grow into, again, to be more holistic, not to do that in sort of a single-minded, heavy-handed way, but really trying to do that as a holistic individual. And yeah, just very aware that there's a lot more to grow on in every capacity.
You know, there was a quote too that's viral from him, and it was at the end of like game 6, and they were asking him a question about, you know, what, how did you feel about your performance? And all he said was, the job's not done yet. You know, that was the kind of guy he was. He cut right through it, because those guys have to go through the litany of questions of the same
Totally.
way all the time, you know. So he was
Right.
good at navigating through those waters without caring.
Yeah. And
You
just
know.
being convicted, right? He was very sure
Yeah.
of sort of his core beliefs and his core frameworks that powered him through his career. And I think
Yeah.
there's a lot to value in that.
Absolutely, there is. So, if anyone out there wants to learn more about your company, get involved, learn more about you, what's the good business?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find us at carbonsmart.com. Pretty intuitive on how to spell that. We are on LinkedIn. We're on anywhere else. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm fairly active there. I answer TMs, so always happy to chat with folks.
Cool. Ben, this has been wonderful, man. Thank you so much for your story. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks so much, Joe. Really
Thank you,
appreciate
sir.
it.
Thank you. Take care.